Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm actually reading this for the second time because first time my video stopped in the middle. I needed to remove stuff from the hard drive to get it done. So I thought what I would do is I thought I would pull a card. I pulled a card earlier, and it was the moon card, and I kind of didn't feel right about that card, even though I thought it was a beautiful card, and I thought, wow, this is like kind of amazing. So there's a card that's turned. Queen of Pentacles is turned around. Okay, let's see if I can get this going here. I am going to pull a card and see what comes up, and then I'm going to read the meditation. So after a few false starts, here we go. So I'll give this a quick shuffle. My guides will tell me when. Sometimes the cards flip up and flip about. One more. Okay. Okay, here we go. So the card I got today is the Seven of Wands. Okay. I had the moon before, and I thought, this kind of, I don't know, it just didn't feel right. So I decided to give it another shuffle, and this is the card that I got, Seven of Wands. Looks like this guy's having a bit of a challenge. He's got his wand in his hand, and all these wands are being kind of brought up against him. So there's like a little bit of a challenge going on here. That seems to fit more with the meditation today than the other card, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and use this card in reference to the meditation, but I'm going to go ahead and read the meditation. Okay. We're on day 16th. It's April 28th, 2025. I said, so last night I watched the episode of Next Generation that was discussed in the love stream. And that one's the one called Davok, or Darmok. Darmok is the name. And it's from season 5, and it's episode number 2 from the 5th season of Star Trek Next Generation. So if you're interested in watching that, then I would recommend it. It's a very good episode. And Ramon comes in and says, what was your summation? I said, well, it was interesting. Jean, are you here, and can we discuss it? And Gene Roddenberry says, sure, I wanted to talk about it last night, but I figured that you had to go to sleep. I said, yes, so let's talk about it now. And he's like, okay, so what did you get, at the beginning? I said, well, just before they sent Picard to the planet's surface, the thought that went through my mind was about how often people raise their voices so that, and they think that by doing that, they will be better understood. Picard's speech was something that sounded remotely like a politician doing a filibuster. And Gene Roddenberry says, remotely. I said, he said the writer had to watch a bunch of political speeches before the entire speech was actually put together. And I said, oh, well, that makes sense. So I was accurate in my summation that this was all just phony baloney from Picard. Picard is generally a character I like, but his ramblings got on my nerves. Those guys couldn't understand him. And Gene Roddenberry says, what was your takeaway of the aliens? I said, I was reminded of people who don't speak the language and are trying to understand in every way possible. I could feel their exasperation. They were trying so hard, but it felt like the overall sense was like banging one's head against the wall. And Ramon says, you had that sort of experience with radio when you're trying to send it to an operator with a weak signal. I said, yes, it was like that. I could tell that they were trying. Picard had to get away from his crew at that point. And Gene Roddenberry says, how do you mean? I said, you hear negative things being said, and you kind of take it in. It's like the impact of other people coming in and then trying to impose their interpretations onto the person in question. And Gene Roddenberry says, you mean like Riker's response? And I said, yeah. He was kind of trying to impact the negotiations instead of letting the captain work through them. Later, he got angry and demanded that Data and Troy go and find the answers that he needed. And he came across as a bit abrasive. And don't even get me started on Worf. And Gene Roddenberry says, okay, let's talk about Commander Riker in that scenario. Where do you think he was spiritually? I said he was beyond being spiritual. He was behaving as society often does when they don't understand something. I know that I often judge myself harshly, but a spiritual experience or an epiphany will sometimes cause me to fear being judged by society. He wanted things to be conformed to his liking. It was sort of like the people who speak in different language having someone demand that they speak their language. Does that make sense? And Gene Roddenberry says it's a good summation. Riker was the sort of demand results now, and Worf was the one trying to force square pegs into round holes. Worf did not handle this at all well. When Picard was taken out of his role and placed into another role, he found himself trying to understand his counterpart. And I said, why did Darmok do this? I mean, he really put himself and Picard in mortal jeopardy. And Gene Roddenberry said, to make Picard try to understand. When things get challenging, people will try to make themselves understood. When things are not challenging, guess what happens? I said, people ignore it. We always try to push a sort of idea that if there is no problem at hand, then what's the point? If they know that there is something happening, they will do whatever they can to work it out. And Ramon says, same thing happened to you in France when you got sick. All of the ladies in the cafe were trying to help you, and you were in Darmok's situation. No one could understand you. How did that feel? I said, I was frantic. I thought that people were lovely, but I couldn't communicate with them. It felt like I was cut off. And Gene Roddenberry said, that is how Darmok felt. He was so desperate in his attempts to be understood that he put himself in great peril to do just that. And I said, it was sad that, though, he ended up sacrificing his life to make Picard understand. By the end of the story, Picard understood and was able to relate to the ideas that Darmok was conveying. He understood what was happening. The sad thing is, I don't think the crew fully grasped what had happened. And Gene Roddenberry said, isn't that the way it generally is? People who are spiritual are generally judged for being a bit different. You go through life on a sort of starship, and you connect with like-minded people. Suddenly, you meet another person, and you have to try to understand their point of view. It becomes your choice if you do. You could take Picard's path and try to understand, or you take Worf's path and try to force it to your liking, all the while not making too many friends in the process. In taking things calmly, you come to understand that all of the things you are doing will have an impact. I said, did Riker realize that his actions had an impact? And Gene Roddenberry said, he meant well. He was trying to assist his commanding officer, but what he lost track of was the idea that his commanding officer should be trusted to handle the situation on his own. I said, if they had not tried to beam Picard back when the beast attacked, Darmok might have survived. Gene Roddenberry said, true, but his impact might have left them all back at square one. The act of understanding goes beyond the physicality of one man. When understanding, Picard would be a better captain and a better man. He would also be able to teach the others the same lessons that he had learned. Perhaps in learning through him, the crew might actually have a better chance of communicating with this group of beings. Maybe it will help people to better understand others, not just the ones who look and speak like them. This was the idea behind the story with the understanding. People can strive to break down the wall. I said, it does make sense. Thank you. The story does seem to make a lot more sense to me now. How did they develop the concept of metaphors as a means of communication? Gene Roddenberry says, the act of creating a language is like any other. You take on an idea and put a word to it. Through it, you give it a sense using imagery. As you create an idea, you pick a word or a series of words. Arms wide open. What do you perceive by that? I said, a sense of openness, acceptance. He says, okay, try this. Walls come down. I said, that's the idea of breaking barriers. A wall is the notion of separation. Gene Roddenberry said, that is what happened. The barrier was the wall. When understanding was established, the walls came down. Arms wide open, acceptance, embracing those who are different. The concept is not so far off, but it is put in a different way. When you embrace that which is hard to comprehend, the walls come down. That is what it's all about. The journey to this recognition was a part of Picard's path to understanding. People on the same path will always, people are on the same path, and it will always be their task to determine if they fully understand that not speaking a language as a is not a means of judgment. The world itself is like the Federation. It is made up of people, cultures, and ideas, and languages. Do you know the story of the Tower of Babel? I said, yes. People wanted to build a tower to heaven, and God basically said, no, you can't do that. Well, he didn't exactly say that, but he made it so that people would speak all these different languages, and they would basically stop trying to build the tower because they could no longer understand each other. And Gene Roddenberry says, yes. And through signs and gestures, people learned one or two languages, different alphabets, different systems. They had to be relearned. People were devoting so much time to learning languages that they forgot that they had a task at hand or a conflict to contend with. I said, that reminds me of another episode, the one with the silent negotiator. And Gene Roddenberry says, yes, that was a very good example of that. I said, you seem to use language a lot as a pivotal point of reference. And he says, yes, language is a very good means of finding understanding. I said, I remember in that episode how beautiful that form of communication was. He called his interpreters his chorus. I thought that was a very nice description of these three people. And Gene Roddenberry says, yes, but he had become arrogant and also unbearable to be around. He took for granted the things he had, and when he suddenly lost them, he became vulnerable and like a hermit. He had to learn that he needed to take a disadvantage and turn it into an advantage. This is a human lesson that all people must learn. I said, I love that story. I also found that Data learning sign language was inspiring. I tried to learn it, but somehow it just didn't go over so well. And Gene Roddenberry said, you should not give up. You know that what you learned was that it was not a joke. It was a beautiful language, but it does have to take some time to learn it. I said, yes, that is true. Maybe I should watch the episode again, and then we can talk more about it. And Gene Roddenberry said, just one suggestion. Please forgive yourself for past mistakes with regards to learning it. Patience will always be a virtue. I said, well, I will try to remember that. I mean, after all, it was 20, 30 years ago that I was trying to learn the language in the first place. Ramon says, good idea. You've often held on to these mistakes that no longer serve you. Now you can let them go and move on. And I said, I will. Thank you both. Sending light. That's where I ended. So I'm going to see what the book says with regards to the Seven of Wands, and see if this has anything to do with what I had in the meditation, because it seems to me that the conflict that was described in the episode of the story actually does have a little bit to do with this card. So it is the Seven of Wands, and it says, a man holding a wand defends his position against 6 others. The open doorway he appears to defend may represent his home. Therefore, he is defending his own ideals. His expression is one of great concentration, although he does not appear perturbed. 7s show the continuation of a cycle and can bring change. So this really does apply to the overall idea of the story that we were talking about. And I think it's really interesting that this comes up because it does talk about change. Because in this instance, the mind was changed. The heart was changed. People's ideas were changed because they understood something that was new and different. And so I think that's really a very, very profound meaning behind this card. I'm going to pull one more card and see what it says. And the card that I pulled is the Star. And this has a picture of a woman on it that doesn't have a top, so I'm going to cover that part. And you can see the image. But the star is the second card that I pulled. These are really beautiful cards, but again, YouTube has like some kind of a thing about the body, so I'll just do it that way. So that is the card. It's a beautiful card, and I'm going to look it up here, and I'm going to see what it says. The star. A bright star illuminates a young woman as she pours water from two pitchers. The pitchers are gold, representing the conscious, while the water represents the subconscious. The woman brings renewal. Water is life-giving. She provides harmony and balance to both the physical and the emotional plane. She sits within the pool of water representing the emotion, but we can see from the star on her forehead that her thoughts are illuminated. Her naked state represents truth. Traditionally, stars are a good omen, representing hope, peace, faith. From the night sky, stars can be used to find our way home, so that are seen as helpful guide on our pathway through life. So that's the cards for today. Now I feel a little weird, showing the body, but it's a beautiful card. But I think that the star kind of coincides here with the changes that are coming. So I think that's kind of a beautiful message, and I think it's a really nice one. So, but at any rate, I will close for now, and I hope that you enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the discussion of the episode. I thought it was a kind of a beautiful episode, and hopefully this will appeal to you in some way, shape, or form. But at any rate, it does lighten the mood, because the world is kind of in turmoil right now, and we need something that's going to lessen the burden that we are all under at the moment. So thank you for watching, and I wish you a wonderful day. And as always, namaste.